We know that eating unhealthy foods, those that are high in salt, unsaturated fats, and sugar, aren't good for us. So why is it so hard to stick with and come up with healthy meal ideas? Today, I'm going to give you 6 tips on how to create healthy meals with post-stroke considerations. All right, everyone, let me introduce the elephant in the room here. This is Miss Lucy. She wanted to be on the back porch with me while I was filming today, so she may be in and out of some of my shots. All right, that's it. Let's move on to tip number 1. So, tip number 1 is to stick to the perimeter. And whether or not you're following one of the 3 dietary approaches that I talked about in my previous videos, or you're just trying to eat healthier, sticking to the perimeter is a great rule of thumb. And what do I mean by this? So I'm talking about the perimeter of the grocery store. When you go in, think about how a grocery store is laid out. Typically, you've got fresh vegetables, fruits, fresh meat and seafood, and dairy around the outside of the store, right? When you think about what's in the middle of the store, typically that's more packaged and processed foods. Now, I'm not saying that all of those things are bad. That's where you can find dried pasta and rice, canned vegetables, all of that type of thing. But you can also find packaged cookies, crackers, crisps, all those types of things too. So my rule of thumb when it comes to sticking to the perimeter is getting 80% of your foods from the perimeter and 20% from the middle. Tip number 2 is to think about the adaptive equipment that you have or you might need. So this might mean thinking about what kinds of things do you have issues with? Is it trouble chopping? Is it trouble opening cans, lids, jars? Is it trouble holding onto a pot while you're trying to stir? And then what adaptive equipment do you have or what equipment might you need? You can kind of go backwards with this. Think about the meal that you want to make. What are the issues that you might have or foresee that you might have in trying to prepare what you want to make? And then do you have the adaptive equipment that you need, or will you need to order something so that you can be successful in making the meal that you want to make? Tip number 3 is to think about what is safe to make. We know that after a stroke, people can have a wide variety of different symptoms, and depending on what you might be experiencing will influence what is safe to make. So for example, let's say that maybe you're having some cognitive issues. Maybe your short-term memory isn't as good as it used to be before your stroke. If you forget to turn off the oven or a cooktop, an eye on the stove, that could potentially be a dangerous factor. So if you're having trouble with short-term memory issues, maybe we stay away from stovetop or oven cooking. On the other hand, sometimes people experience a change in their ability to detect the difference in cold and hot temperatures. So again, using a cooktop, stovetop, or even sometimes using the microwave might not be safe right now if you're heating things up and can't tell how hot things are. You might be at risk to burn yourself. So how can we break this down to make sure that you can still prepare a healthy meal, but in a way that's safe to do so? So let's walk through how to assess what might be safe for you. The first method is cold meal preparation. And cold meal prep is basically just any type of meal that you can make without the use of a microwave, stove, or anything with heat. It might include things like sandwiches or salads. The second method is microwaving. And if temperature sensation isn't a problem for you, microwaving can be a great solution to making hot meals that don't require you to handle heavy pots or pans. I would recommend staying away from too many prepared frozen meals because those are often high in sodium. The third method is using the stovetop or the oven. And this is safe to use if you don't have short-term memory issues or you've found ways to compensate for those effectively using alarms and reminders. And if you have temperature sensation intact, as well as having the strength to put things in and take things out of the oven safely or off of the stovetop safely. So if you have trouble doing two-handed things or putting two-handed things into the oven, maybe worthwhile thinking about a small one-handed cast iron skillet that you can put in and out, as long as it's not too heavy. Cast iron can be heavy. You can also use cookie sheets with just one hand, as long as they're not laying down with a bunch of food, making them really heavy. Tip 4 is to plan your meals. And this is one of the best ways to stick to a healthy diet. It can be fun and it's really cost effective too. You can try out some new recipes, look up something different, or stick to things that have worked for you in the past. I recommend trying to eat the same things for breakfast and lunch and then switching things up at dinner time. This can help to reduce decision fatigue during the week, and it can also help financially as well. Planning meals can also help to reduce the temptation to stop for fast food or to make something that's not super healthy for you, especially if you don't have the ingredients for it. Tip 5 is to make a list. Making a list ensures that you're buying the right ingredients for your meal planning. It reduces the temptation to buy other things when you get in the store, and it can also help to reduce decision fatigue, like I talked about before. You did all the work on the front end, planning your meals and making your list. Now all you have to do is buy the ingredients. A secondary tip I have that kind of goes along with this is just don't go grocery shopping hungry. That's always bad news and will lead you to buy less than optimal things like ice cream or chips or those salty, fatty things that we crave when we're hungry. The last tip I have is to change your mindset. This is more of a big picture tip versus a small action, see immediate results kind of tip. But I think that it's probably the most important to actually changing lifestyle and continuing with a healthy eating plan. We know that eating healthier is something that doesn't happen overnight, especially if you have different food patterns at the moment. But if we can start to think and change our mindset to picture food as fuel for our body versus a coping strategy, perhaps for anxiety, loneliness, depression, or even as something just for pleasure, because we know that eating high-fat, sugary foods can be very pleasurable. It feels good to eat fatty, sugary, salty things like a donut. I mean, we all love a donut. So if we can start thinking about food as a fuel, something that's going to make us feel good and allow our body, our organs, our brains to perform at high capacity, versus eating unhealthy foods and feeling sluggish and bloated and crappy, it's having a why behind what we're eating. And I think that's the most important part. Having the why to fall back on when you're sitting there looking at a salad versus 2 donuts. We know which one we want to eat. We also know which ones we should eat. And knowing that salad is going to give our body nutrients and give our body energy to do what it needs to do much more effectively than the donuts. All right, everyone, that's it for today. Comment below and let me know what keeps you on track with your healthy eating routine. And remember, I've got a link down in the description to sign up for my free email list if you're interested in getting 3 stroke recovery tips a week and access to my free ebook, The Stroke Recovery Pocket Guide. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Lucy. Thank you.